This past week, I was in London speaking at an event for Barratt Homes, Barratt London specifically. And it was all about helping first time buyers get on the property ladder, figure out how they're going to conquer the challenge of a house deposit. And I know a lot of people listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube channel. This is a particular challenge that people are facing. And so in this video and episode to the podcast, and by the way, this is going to be available as a video on the YouTube channel at 12 p.m. We are going to be talking about a new scheme. Well, it's not really new, but it's been around now. It's a new scheme which is called Deposit Boost. And this is going to be a great help for first-time buyers. And for some reason, this isn't being spoken about anywhere near enough. And so I'm going to break down what it basically means, the eligibility criteria, some key things that you should know, and it will help you get on the property ladder. If you do find value in this, please do share this with friends, with acquaintances who may be looking to get on the property ladder, because this is going to be some really important information, and part of this I will scribe. So again, it will be available as a video on the YouTube channel from 12 p.m. And the way you're going to be able to see the visual stuff that I'm going to scribe is via the channel. So please make sure that you go and check that out as well. But as always, I will try to explain this audibly for those of you on Spotify and Apple and across other podcast platforms so that you can understand what I'm scribing. All right, so if you're a first-time buyer, mixed emotions right now, probably you're feeling defeated. You may feel as though you're facing an insurmountable task. Well, I've got some good news for you. Number one, it is not insurmountable. Number two, there is help out there. Now, Help to Buy came to an end at the back end of 2022. And since then, the government hasn't really announced any alternative to Help to Buy as a method of assistance to help first-time buyers. And Deposit Boost is something that is being led by developers. So not just by the likes of Barratt, but Simmons, David Wilson Homes. Most of the developers have Deposit Boost as an option. So what is Deposit Boost? Let's actually just start there. So Deposit Boost is basically a scheme where the developers will essentially give you a 5% boost to your deposit to help you get on the property ladder. So it's really a bit of their own cash that they're putting in to help you get on the property ladder. Now, the criteria for this is that obviously it has to be a home that is available on a development provided by the developer that you go with. So, for example, if you went with Barratt's and they have 15 developments, they may only have this available for, say, 10 of those developments. So it has to be in a development that this is available for. Number two, you also have to have at least a 10% deposit. Now, that's an important number, and we'll come back to that a bit later on in this episode to talk about what that actually does for things like your loan to values, okay, which is a really important factor when it comes to affordability. But you need to have at least a 10% deposit. Now, it is only available for home buyers. It is not available if you're looking to do a buy to let, so investment property. Now, there may be additional terms and conditions that various developers will apply to this offer. So it's really, really important if you're looking for a home right now, and maybe you are in London, or I don't know, you might be in Sheffield, wherever you might be, speak to your developer and try and get a sense of what the terms and conditions are, what their criteria are for this deposit boost scheme, so that you can make sure that you can tick all of the boxes that they require for you to tick in order to be able to use this scheme. From what I understand, this isn't something that is going to be difficult to use, but you just need to be aware of the T's and C's, the terms and conditions of this. We've spoken a lot about property prices, interest rates over the past 6-7 months, both on YouTube and both on the podcast. And I feel as though interacting with you that listen to the podcast and watch the YouTube channel, one of the biggest things that I guess you guys find as a challenge, well, there are two things. Number one, saving for that deposit, but it's become even more difficult now with the fact that interest rates have gone up so significantly from 0.5%, 0.1% really, to 4.25 at this point in time. And I just have to say this as a really important point to highlight. And I had a conversation on the YouTube channel last Friday with Sam Norris, who works in the mortgage space. We were talking about interest rates on mortgages. And the consensus is that interest rates are probably going to be at this level for some time. And there is conflicting information out there from, the International Monetary Fund saying that, interest rates will come back down to pre-COVID levels. They're talking about the Bank of England base rate, typically, how that will interact with interest rates for mortgages, we don't yet know. But for mortgages specifically, there is this consensus that this is the new level at which we're going to have to deal with mortgage rates. Now, I know that that sounds like bad news for first-time buyers, and it is bad news in comparison to where we have actually come from. But if you zoom out very, very quickly to our historic journey and go back to the 1970s, you'll find that our mortgage rates at this level right now are still at a historic low. In the 1970s, they had 15% mortgage rates. That isn't the case right now. I think I was reading some bits and pieces last week, and the 2-year fixed rate at the moment is around about 5.49 roughly. There are 5-year fixed deals that are around about 4.3 or so on the market right now. So I think it's really important to understand that if you are a first-time buyer and one of the things that you've been telling yourself is, I'm going to wait until interest rates come down, to mortgage rates come down, it is likely that that is not going to happen. And so I really want to encourage you, make sure you keep your ear to the ground first and foremost. Don't completely shut yourself off from, the markets and looking and finding out what's going on in your local area, because house prices in areas are different and different things are happening in different areas. So it's a really important point. Don't shut yourself off. Keep active. Continue to speak to real estate agents, estate agents, and try and understand what's going on locally, because you never know when there might be an opportunity. Really, really important. Now, back to the deposit boost scheme. Let me just explain how this works from a visual point of view, then we'll get on to what it does for your loan to value, which is an important factor when it comes to your affordability. So this is what I'm going to start to describe. And again, I'm going to try and make sure that this is as clear as possible for those of you who are listening to this audibly on Spotify or Apple or any of the other podcast outlets. But to really get the full benefit of this explanation, I'd encourage you to go and watch the video on the channel from 12 p.m. Now, let's have a look at how it works from a practical point of view. Now, let's just say you're looking at a property with a sale price of £200,000. Okay, now we already know that the criteria is you need to have a 10% minimum deposit to be able to use the deposit boost. Now, with a 10% minimum deposit, that means you need to have £20,000 in a deposit saved up already. Now, how this technically works is the developer, so let's just say for argument's sake that actually this is Barrett's, what they will do is they will give you a 5% boost based on the sale price of the property. So in this example, they're going to boost you by £10,000. Now that will give you a total deposit of £30,000. Crucially, what this will also do is this will give you an 85% loan to value. What this basically does from a mortgage point of view is it should help you, number one, get access to better rates when it comes to the mortgage. So again, think about this from a lender's point of view. There are 95% mortgages still available out on the market right now, which are a great help for first-time buyers, 100%. But with a 5% deposit, the bank has more risk in the game. So let's just say, the property market were to tank 10-15% because of a horrible recession. With a 5% equity, it is very, very likely that you'll be in negative equity. And from a bank's point of view, that is a risk to them. So as a result of that, what they will do is they will give you a higher rate of interest. They'll offer you a higher mortgage rate because they need to compensate themselves for the additional risk of you only putting a 5% deposit in. Now that works in your favor if you have a loan to value of 85%, because at that point you're going to start accessing better interest rates from the various mortgage providers. And that directly translates to how much your mortgage is going to be, and more importantly, your affordability when they start to test you for, can you actually afford this mortgage? It is a really, really important point to mention. Now, with a deposit boost, you're not going to get the 5% deposit boost into your hands. No. What will happen is, once everything's agreed, you give the developer your £20,000. That additional 5% boost is going to be given to your solicitor, who's handling the legal paperwork for the mortgage transaction, and that will be paid to them upon completion of the actual mortgage. But this is still a really, really big and very, very important scheme to help people get on the property ladder. And if I'm completely honest, it is so nice to see that we have developers across the country actually spearheading this, because frankly, getting on the property ladder feels almost impossible now. And because the government hasn't replaced Help to Buy, this is very, very welcome. And like I've already said, this isn't being spoken about enough. And so, look, there are some other things that I think you need to be also mindful of. I'm just going to check my notes here, actually. This is not going to be available if you're doing a buy-to-let. So this is only available for home buyers. Now, I haven't necessarily seen that this is exclusively available to first-time buyers. And that's something that maybe is worthwhile researching. I couldn't find enough to give me that definitive answer in preparation for recording this episode of the podcast. So, in other words, if you are already on the property ladder and you wanted to change homes, maybe trade up, you may be able to use this, but you need to ask the question directly. I'm not sure that I haven't been able to see exclusively that this is only for first-time buyers. The clause that I've heard is home buyers, and home buyers aren't exclusively first-time buyers, but it is not available if you're looking at a buy-to-let and it's an investment property. It is not available. Those are the main things that I wanted to point out for this. And let me just give you some words of encouragement to kind of close off this episode of the podcast. And I said this in the talk in Barrett's. You know, please, please, please control the controllables. There is nothing that we can do about interest rates rising. There is nothing we can do about mortgage rates also changing as a byproduct of interest rates going up. And so in times like this, it is really important to make sure that you're doing everything that you can, everything within your control, to try and take charge as best as you can of the situation. And what that means is, like I've already alluded to, keeping your ear to the ground, making sure that you're aware of what's going on locally. Something might happen locally where actually an opportunity comes up and you can press the button, pull the trigger, get on the property ladder. But if you close yourself off and just think, I'm not going to bother, you're not going to be able to make any progress with this. You know, importantly, for your deposit, again, that is the biggest challenge most people are facing now. You know, being stringent in terms of your financial plan to actually get to that deposit is really important. And make sure that you're trying to utilize all of the resources that are available to you. If you've got, you know, family that are able to give you some help. I mean, there is also this facility where if you have parents who have quite a lot of equity in the house, they may be able to release a 5% equity from the property to help towards boosting your deposit. That is also possible. Try and make sure you're thinking outside of the box and speaking to friends, speaking to family, and make sure you're using all of the other things that are available. And you know, take charge of this. You know, take charge of this. I always create this kind of content, so it's a great jumping off point for you to do further research about these topics. Take charge, control the controllables. You should be aware of how the affordability calculation works within mortgages. Okay, and I might do a separate video on this completely, but affordability is what is killing people right now. So in other words, if you have personal loans, car finance, you've got credit cards, these things are going to kill how much you can borrow, and it's going to severely impact how much you can actually, what houses you can buy, what price ranges you can shop in. So I will do a separate video and a separate episode talking about this specifically, because it is an important part of the mortgage process that you need to understand. But look, if you have a load of debts, make sure that you're prioritizing paying down those debts as much as you can. Because you, again, control the controllables. You don't want to give the banks any excuse to decline you. With that being said, I would welcome any feedback on the YouTube channel. If you're watching this on the channel right now, if you're listening to this on Apple, Spotify, any of the podcast outlets, please let me know how you feel, what you're thinking. How are you feeling about this whole situation with the housing market right now as a first time buyer? I know that it is challenging, but please remember that this is a journey, right? This is probably one of the biggest steps that you're ever going to take. And I think enjoy the process. Once you achieve this, and you will, believe me, you will. I believe that you will, because I know that you can. You're going to feel such a sense of accomplishment. And it is a stepping stone. It's a huge stepping stone to bigger things. And what you learn in this process is repeatable, particularly from a financial point of view. That discipline to save for your deposit, that is repeatable. And enjoy the process as much as you possibly can, because when you achieve that goal, and you will, you're going to feel so much better. Before I close this off, I mentioned this in the episode last week. I am now taking questions for the podcast. So if you do listen to the podcast regularly and you have a particular question that you want to ask, head over to my website, peterkomalafe.com. On the podcast page, you can submit your question there. I will then do maybe one episode a month where I will dedicate that to your question specifically. Just get a bit more interaction.